What's up, Helix users, Podgo people, and HX Stompers? Today I want to give you my opinion on the HX Stomp versus the Podgo, which one's going to be right for you, and which one you can use in various applications. First and foremost, there are so many similarities and differences between the two that this is totally an individual decision. Ultimately, your decision has to be made based on your needs and your requirements. Whatever you need to get your job done using one of these units, then that's going to be the one for you. I just want to talk about different applications that I use each of them for. They're both great units. I've spent extensive time with each of them, and I think I've got a really good understanding of, the pros and cons of each, where one shines and the other falls. So, let's start off with the form factor, right? Here you go, side by side. So that's what we're looking at side by side. The HX Stomp is obviously way smaller. Okay, you could literally probably fit 4 of these into the form factor of one Podgo. So if you're, for example, you're a bass player or an acoustic player that really only needs one sound for a whole show, then I think that the HX Stomp is going to be your no-brainer. If you are a person who is coming from a full pedal board rig into a tube amp, and you already have a nice pedal board, and you're just looking for a more flexible option, maybe something that you can go direct with in a pinch, something that can basically do anything that you need it to, a multi-effect that can also record and go direct to front of house, then the HX Stomp integrates perfectly into your already existing pedal board. In fact, I have a video using it on a pedal board. I filmed our concert television special for Jessica Lynn using my HX Stomp and Real pedal board. I'll link that up here, so you could see the pedal board that I used for that television taping. And for that, it was great. I had no problems with it, but, and this is a big but, because comparatively, the Podgo is only $450. So for $450, you're getting a lot of unit. For $600, you're also going to need the additional pedals, and you're also probably going to want to get some type of MIDI controller or expression pedal. You want to get external foot switches. You have all those options on the back here. You have an effects loop here, and you also have your expression or your foot switches here. So when you unlock the HX Stomp with, say, the Morningstar MC6, or they just came out with the MC8, it becomes such a powerhouse of a unit. But the unfortunate part is that now you're talking about spending an extra $200 or more on more gear when you really wanted something simple to begin with. So the HX Stomp plus a MIDI controller, expression pedal, volume pedal, or wah pedal will be an amazing, amazing option, and just going to cost you more money. Conversely, when you have the Podgo, this is meant to be an all-in-one rig. Now, it's not marketed to the professional market, but this thing is a freaking powerhouse. It does everything that you could think of in terms of getting tones within the capabilities of the block limits. And it's got an expression pedal, it's got a wah pedal and a volume pedal built right into it. That's not a block that you could change, so you are stuck with that if you don't use it. Tough crap. You also have, the options on the back. You can also add another foot switch, you can add another expression pedal, but with this you already have one built in, which is a huge perk. Obviously you have 6 foot switches here instead of only 3 on the Stomp. So when you're in pedal board mode, you can have 6 pedals, or you can have 4 snapshots. So that's huge. Having the 4 snapshots or the pedal board by hitting the mode switch and a separate tuner switch, that's a huge nod to the Podgo and a big, big up that it has over the HX Stomp. If you wanted to use the HX Stomp and you wanted to use the tuner in it, then you automatically eat up a foot switch, which is really crappy in my opinion. I hate that you have to do that you have to get an external switch to get the full capabilities out of this, because once you burn a foot switch with that, you have a tap tempo and a tuner here, but then you're only stuck with 2 snapshots or 2 stomps, and that's it. Whereas the Podgo, you have full capability to make a pedal board, set up your snapshots, and a lot more flexibility. Like I said, spend a couple extra bucks and you get the controllers for this, then you're really talking, something special when it comes to this. So a little bit more in terms of similarity. They're both exactly the same navigating on the unit. So if you take a look here at these front panels, right, you see the exact same layout as far as the knobs go, or the buttons, I should say. So those buttons are laid out exactly the same. You navigate the exact same way on this, except you have a big volume knob on here and you have a little volume knob on here. Very similar form factor when it comes to navigating the actual units. The Pod Go gives you 5 knobs. The HX Stomp only gives you 3, but you page over and it's exactly the same. Tonally, exactly the same. I can't give a nudge to either one in terms of basic tone. So if you take a preset in the Pod Go and you import or you copy over the exact same preset, exact same settings, with the exact same impulse response or the exact same cabinet, they will sound identical. I promise you that. I've tested it. I've played these extensively. Will sound exactly the same. No doubt about that. So clear that up right away. Where the HX Stomp starts to earn, starts to become worth its weight in terms of price is that you have a lot more options in terms of cabinet selection. So if you're like me, I'm a big user of dual cabs. I love using the stock dual cabs. I prefer them over impulse responses even because I have a lot more flexibility and a lot more ability to really fine tune the cabinet section of my preset. So with the HX Stomp, I have my dual cabs. It eats up some DSP and sometimes I might run out, but having the dual cabs, in my opinion, is worth it for a greater end result. Whereas the Pod Go only has a single cabinet. So if you're using the stock cabs, you are going to be stuck with one single cabinet and that's it. So you have to really know what you're doing with your microphone placement. And honestly, I think that the dual cabs sound so much better because you can mix microphones and you can really blend things out. A lot less flexibility with one microphone. So that's another one for the HX Stomp. But if you are like a lot of people and you're one of those people that immediately say, you need IRs for it to sound good, you need IRs for it to sound good. First of all, you're wrong. That's not true. But I use IRs, I have IRs, I love IRs. I think they're a great thing to have. If you know what you're looking for and you know it's the exact sound that you're gonna want, you just wanna drop it in and make a tone, awesome, great, by all means, do that. They can both host IRs, and if you put the same preset in with the same IR, they will sound exactly the same within the block restrictions. So again, it's considered a tie, but if you're someone who wants to use stock cabs or doesn't want to spend extra money on impulse responses, then I'll give it like a half a point to the HX Stomp. And I guess the next thing I could talk about again is MIDI, because the Pod Go does not have MIDI capability. Or at least not traditional MIDI capability. You can, and trust me, I'm not a MIDI expert by any means. I leave that to my man Alec Bourne, who has the MIDI Mad Science group for Line 6 stuff. He's got a ton of great, Helix and HX Stomp content. I was seeing that there are ways to do MIDI via 1/4 inch on here. I have no idea how that works, to be honest. So it is possible, but I'm not going to claim to be an expert on that one. Whereas on the Pod Go, you have your regular MIDI pins, which is something that someone like me who's not great with MIDI, I'm used to just plugging something like this in and having it work. And using the desktop editor for the MC6 makes my life a whole lot easier and really unlocks the full potential of the HX Stomp. But to reiterate, you're talking about $600 plus additional money for a MIDI controller. One more thing, and this is, do I want to say this is my biggest gripe or my biggest problem, is no parallel effects in the Pod Go. This is, do I want to say a major deal breaker for me, or what do I want to call this? Having no parallel effects loop in this really does knock it for me, because I really like to use it. I use it for my reverbs and my delays. I just really like it. I started doing it in the Helix and I totally fell in love with this whole wet dry thing. And I think it's the best tones I've ever gotten out of my Helix when I do that parallel path, hit the dry signal, and then have the wet affected signal be underneath it. And I have the ability to mix them together. So I just send a perfect end result, exact tone that I want to get. You can't do that in the Pod Go, but you can do that in the HX Stomp, which is another big plus for me, because your end tone result is going to be better if you know what you're doing with the parallel effects and that's something you use. This is definitely going to give you a plus there. Oh yeah, I didn't even mention outputs yet. They're both the same output-wise. You have a stereo out, right? Let me get this focus. Right, on the back here you have a stereo output and you have a stereo input. So if you're using stereo pedals, stereo effect pedals, you can send them into here stereo and send them out stereo. In terms of for the Pod Go, you have your guitar input, you have an effects loop, but you don't have a second input if that's something that you're going to need. Yeah, I don't know why you would need it for the Pod Go. It's not something that you would do with this. But I've also tried working for a while getting a 2 guitar preset in this. So I might try re-exploring that idea because it has that second input. The effects loop also is stereo in this. Is this stereo? Both effects loops are stereo, so that's not a problem there. I wish I could just video with air conditioning on because that would make my life a lot easier. So I'll try to wrap this up. Enough of my rambling. Again, this is just my opinion, my take, what I think the pros and cons of these are after using them both extensively. If you're looking for an all-in-one, excellent value, great tones, something you could just drop on the floor and gig with, then the Pod Go is seriously one of the most impressive pieces of kit that's come out in a long time for its price point. For $450, you're getting a full rig that you can go direct with. You're getting a ton of effects, a ton of amp models that are all world-class stuff. The same stuff that's in the real, flagship Helix. There's a couple things that aren't in there, but they're nothing that I use. Everything that I use is in here. So that doesn't bother me. And again, this is just my opinion on everything. If you're looking for something with the most flexibility and the most integration with another rig, if you already have your rig and you want something to just drop in there to take your rig to the next level, or if you're someone who really needs simple stuff, then I would suggest going with the Pod Go. But a lot of people that are going for their first HX product, or their first Line 6 product, I should say, they're a little concerned with, ditching their favorite pedals. And with the HX Stomp, this takes up no room. So you could replace one Strymon pedal or one big pedal with this and just drop it right on your board and have the ultimate flexibility that you're after and not lose any tone, which is, at the end of the day, the most important thing. So I want you guys to let me know in the comments what you think your pros and cons are for each unit. Help the other people viewing this that maybe aren't sure. Let them know what you use the Pod Go for or the HX Stomp for, what you think are the best pros and cons. What are your deal breakers? I'm curious for myself because maybe I can address some of those in a future video. So it'll help me out. Maybe I can make a future video on it. So let me know your concerns, pros, cons, pluses, minuses. Drop them below and let's have a conversation about it. So I want to thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video, hearing out my opinion on this stuff. This was the Pod Go versus the HX Stomp, and I'll see you in the next video. All right, let's make sure I clean these this time. Since everybody likes to make fun of my dirty Helix equipment, it's because it gets used a lot. It's not my fault. Well, I guess that does make it my fault, but especially now we got the dog since Audrey's been around. We got hair and stuff everywhere. How's that? Ooh. Okay, pretty crispy. How about you? Somebody actually left a funny comment on one of my videos about all the pubes on my Helix and how one day it's going to have its own rock documentary about his hard life on the road, doing drugs and all that type of stuff. So that was pretty funny for whoever left that. Thank you very much.